Hey guys, this is Huntington's disease by Cody Paulson and Sheila Gregerson.
What is the Huntington's disease? It is a disease in which a progressive breakdown of nerve cells in the brain. It weakens and aids the person's physical and mental abilities.
How is Huntington's disease caused? Huntington's disease is when there is a defect on one of the genes in chromosome 4 of the brain. This is where all the genetic code is for humans. The gene produces a code that makes a protein in the body called Huntington. When the Huntington actually becomes defective and doesn't have the proper code, the protein becomes harmful and this causes the brain to change. There is no evidence of what normal Huntington protein acts like, but we know that when it gets a defective gene code, it will be harmful to the brain cells and cause mood changes, depression, non-intentional movements, and your reasoning and thinking skills will go way down. Is it hereditary? Huntington's disease is considered a dominant trait because it takes over the protein and allows for the Huntington to become defected to create the disease. Because it is dominant, the offspring of the parent that has the disease will get it in their lifetime. Because of the genetics, the offspring has a 50-50 chance of also not getting the disease. There have been rare cases of offspring that will get Huntington's disease, but their parents do not have it at all. But this can also be because one of the parents have not been diagnosed with it because it was not severe. What genes do Huntington's disease affect? The gene that allows for Huntington's disease to happen is called the HTT gene. This allows for the Huntington protein to be made by providing the genetic code for it. This also involves a segment of DNA called the KEG trinucleotide, which uses cytosine, adenine, and guanine that are repeated about 10 to 35 times throughout the gene. Genes that carry Huntington's disease, however, produce this trio pattern for 36 to 120 times throughout the gene. This overproduction of the CAG trinucleotide makes the Huntington protein longer, and when it divides, it turns into toxic pieces. These pieces that come together will take over the normal functions of the neurons and end up killing the neurons. When the neurons die, this is when the symptoms show up, and this will lead to having Huntington's disease.
What are the cures? The disease has sadly no cures at all. So far, the only thing that doctors can do to help patients is give them drugs which help with some things. Also, doctors give patients physical therapy to help with the patients. Is it fatal? Sadly, it is fatal. The survival rate is very low. When symptoms start to show, means the person only has around 20 years to live.
Who is impacted by Huntington's disease? Huntington's disease affects both males and females equally because the genes doesn't have more dominance in one gender. The race that is affected the most in people that have European heritage. About 3 to 7 people per 100,000 European heritage people get Huntington's disease. Races that do not get affected as much are Japanese, Chinese, and African descent. People usually show signs and symptoms of Huntington's disease when they are around 30 to 40 years old. This is called adult onset Huntington's. There are rare cases in children that is called juvenile form, where kids are diagnosed around their childhood or adolescent years. Kids will only live around 10 to 15 years after they are showing symptoms of Huntington's disease, and adults will only live about 15 to 20 years after they show signs. So what are the daily struggles of somebody that lives with Huntington's disease? Because it affects part of the brain, people with Huntington's disease will have problems walking, speaking, and swallowing food. People also have problems with their movements when they get twitches, which allows for their bodies to twitch, which makes problems for driving, eating, dressing, etc. This also causes for people to have emotional distress such as anxiety, depression, loneliness, etc. And this is because of the mood changes that comes with the disease. This allows for speaking skills to come off as rude or in a different tone than what they are meant for their words to be. so this allows for people to possibly take them the wrong way when they are talking. Because of their problems in eating, they may need to be tube-fed for their lives because of their issues swallowing food, and because they need high-calorie foods as well, because it takes so much energy for them to constantly be twitching around. These are some pictures of people with Huntington's disease and the actual Huntington's disease chromosome. This is our bibliography of information where we found our information from.